Okay, it is now 6:30, and I'd like to call the March 9, 2023 meeting of the Architecture Review Board to order. Let's see. First on our agenda, I believe we need to,
The first on the agenda is,
the minutes.
did we say approval of the minutes?
You didn't put that on the agenda.
Oh. Well,
Can
we can still.
Can we do that?
Yes.
Okay, so everyone has reviewed the minutes from our last meeting, which is actually January 19th, 2023. And if there's any comment to those from anyone? Me, I'll just say that there are two L's in my last name. That would be the only thing I would point out. Yes. So do I hear a motion from the floor?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, meeting minutes of January 19th, 2023 passes unanimously. Next on the agenda, petition of 300 through 335 Benton Street and 261 and 346 Mazurek Avenue, ARB application, review of petition to Board of Zoning Appeals by Cactus LLC for the construction of a 5,841 square foot addition in the courtyard of a light industrial building located at 300 to 335 Benton Street and 261 and 346 Mazurek Avenue. I believe our applicants are here. Take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Barry Knott. I'm a lawyer with the firm of Knott & Dunn with offices at 1656 Main Street, Stratford. I'm here this evening on behalf of Cactus LLC. David Kremen is with me. He's a managing member of that entity. Owns a property at 300 Benton Street, 335 Benton Street, 261 Mazurek Avenue, and 346 Mazurek Avenue, all of which are the subject of tonight's application. This was a referral to you because of an application to the Board of Zoning Appeals for variances of the parking regulations in order to allow my client to construct a 5,841 square foot addition to the courtyard of a light industrial property from which they operate, where they operate an aerospace manufacturing facility and warehouse currently at 300 Benton Street, 335 Benton, and 346 Mazurek Avenue. In addition to these three addresses, my client has recently acquired property at 261 Mazurek Avenue, the interior of which will be incorporated into the total square footage of my client's operational area, and the exterior of which will be incorporated into total parking and open space areas of the site. In support of this application tonight, I've handed each of you two photographs of the existing building, one taken from Benton Street and the other taken from Mazurek Avenue. The Benton Street one, which is the first one I handed to you, you can see the courtyard in front of this building in which it currently shows parking there, in which this new addition is going to be constructed. The second photo is a photo of the rear of the building on Mazurek Avenue, which is like plain vanilla. I've also handed each of you architectural renderings of the total front of the proposed building on Benton, as well as architectural renderings of just the proposed addition to be located in the courtyard. The area of the proposed structure, the building, when completed, will be 30,786 square feet, which includes the 5,841 square foot proposed addition. In addition to the variance application, we've submitted a coastal area management application, both of which will be heard at a public hearing of the Board of Zoning Appeals on April 4th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Last night, we appeared before the Waterfront and Harbor Management Commission, which approved this application unanimously. Now, the managing member of my client is Dave Kremen, who is also president and chief executive officer of Stratton Industries, which currently operates in Stratford at two addresses, one at 180 Surf Avenue and one at this location. Stratton Industries manufactures precision aircraft and aerospace components primarily for Sikorsky Aircraft and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, also known as NASA. Stratton employs about 90 people, half of whom are at each of the locations, It is anticipated that up to 5 more people will be hired at this site when this application is approved. Primarily, this 5,800 feet is going to be used for automated machinery and warehouse space. So there aren't going to be a lot of employees incorporated into this 5,800 square feet. Stratton's hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., Saturday, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. Stratton Industries was started by Dave's father, Ed, in 1961 at a facility near the VFW Hall on Barnum Avenue Cutoff. In 1965, Stratton moved to the Surf Avenue facility. In 1988, it expanded to 335 Benton Street. In 2013, my client acquired the property at 300 Benton Street, and in 2017, they added to their assemblage the property at 346 Mazurek Avenue. That had been a residential home. It was raised, and it is now part of the parking lot. As you look at the site plan, to the far right corner on the Mazurek Avenue side, there's a parking lot. That's where the house at 346 Mazurek was located. Last year, my client acquired a property at 261 Mazurek Avenue, and that's the extreme left-hand side of the site plan. You'll see there's a little structure there. It's got parking in front of it and parking in back of it. That was a little machine shop, and that building, the interior space of that building is going to be incorporated into the larger building to create a unified building structure. Obviously, Mr. Kremen would like to stay in Stratford, but needs this addition in order to provide adequate warehouse and storage space to support the manufacturing facilities currently in existence at this location. In December of 2017, I submitted an application to the BZA for variances to allow the expansion of the Benton Street facility to incorporate the property at 346 Mazurek Avenue after we bought that house on Mazurek, and to connect the 2 buildings. The buildings at 300 and 335 Benton were not connected at that time. So when we picked up the house at 346 and created a parking lot, we connected the 2 main buildings, 335 and 300, across the back on the north side of that courtyard. That application was approved unanimously by the BZA and the Waterfront Commission in 2018. As I indicated a few minutes ago, Dave is with me tonight and has brought with him some samples of the exterior material he is anticipating to use on the new location, and he's available to answer your questions. Dave, could you get those materials? Why don't you hand them to the first commissioner over there? Now, when you look at the site plan, you'll see that the landscaping component of the open space area is somewhat limited at this time. There are 4 trees on the back of the building, on the Mazurek Avenue side of the building, and there's minimal, and the rest of it is lawn area. There's minimal landscaping by way of bushes and trees, other than those 4 trees to the rear. Typically what happens in these situations is that when we go to the ZBA, they'll make recommendations that we enhance the landscaping, and Jay Habansky typically provides us with a more detailed landscaping plan after input from the town engineer. Now, having said that, that was the old procedure. I've been here before enough times to know that you may very well have landscaping recommendations, and if that should be the case, you can incorporate your landscaping recommendations into your referral to Habansky, and he can then cause us to include that landscaping as part of the variance approval. So I have nothing further as far as my presentation is concerned, other than to be available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Attorney Knott. So I think we open it up to questions and comments from the commission. So, Tom, would you like to kick us off?
Can you point out on this plan where the trash slash dumpster area is?
Come over here, Dave. Identify yourself. And you're talking about the site plan?
Yep.
That's this one.
David Kremen, I own Cactus LLC, and I'm also president of Stratton Industries. So currently, if you look at the gray box, the courtyard where it says proposed one-story addition, the current dumpster is in the back of that box.
Okay. Where will it be relocated?
So where you see to the, I think we have a couple of options. One is on the other side in the parking lot. So all the way to the right, you'll see the parking lot that is on Maseric Avenue. If you go to the bottom of that parking lot, I'll say,
Yep.
we can relocate it there. That would be one option.
Okay. With that in mind, though, we're going to recommend that dumpsters need to be screened with some sort of fencing other than chain link. And actually, that block you passed around was rather nice. If you could make, a three-sided dumpster enclosure with
Okay.
a operable door, I think that would be fine.
That's a typical requirement that the zoning staff is going to impose on us, that it be located on a concrete pad and adequately screened.
I think if you use the same material, it's gonna, just enhance your property.
Yeah, we can make it look good.
Overall, I think the addition is fine. I mean, it's taking the same language on Maseric Avenue and transferring it over to Benton Street. I don't have a problem with the volume or the roof line or anything. It keeps the language nice. But something I'd like to comment on is the landscaping. There's this proposed landscape area on Maseric Avenue. What is that? What type of plants?
Those trees are there now, the trees that are shown on the plan. Those trees went in when we did the last variance application connecting the two buildings across the back on the Maseric Avenue side.
Okay, is this an old photo?
No, that's a recent photo.
Okay, I'm not seeing trees here. Do you see them? Am I missing it? Are they very small? Okay,
They're thin.
okay.
They're tall but thin.
Okay. All right, I see them in a different photo, I guess. Anything you can do to enhance the landscaping area, I think is going to be really beneficial to your property, especially since Maseric Avenue is the more residential side of this neighborhood.
Well, not only that, the other side of Maseric Avenue, the other side of the street is residential.
Exactly,
This side of
yes.
the street is light industrial.
Right, and I think it really helps that you don't have the power lines going over your property on that side of the road. So you can plant, taller trees, stuff that'll grow up and help screen your building. Is there any lighting or signage being proposed?
We don't have any signage up other than just street numbers right now.
Okay,
We do have lighting up, just security type lighting.
okay. Is signage something that you can see in the future, or?
Signage is not gonna be a big deal because whatever signage he's got on the Benton Street side of the property is gonna be much smaller than the signage allowed under the zoning regulations. The signage allowed under the zoning regulations are a function of the width of the building, and this is a very wide building.
Sure.
So, and he doesn't need substantial signage at all because the people that go there know where they're going, and he doesn't attract people who are not intentionally going to his factory. I mean, everybody knows where he is.
That's understood. I think the point of this board is to gauge its attractiveness. We want you to have a good property. We want your property to enhance the neighborhood further. So if signage is a possibility.
We're not gonna be asking
Obviously.
for any variances of the signage regulations. And I suspect that whatever sign he chooses to put up is gonna be much smaller than that which is allowed under the zoning regulations.
Understood. Jamie, I think that's all I have. I don't want to, take up everyone's talking points.
John Zabel, do you have any further comments?
No, I really don't. Like I said, I think Tom articulated it well, just that it's essentially taking what's already set back into a courtyard, if I'm looking at the picture correctly, and just moving it street side to gain additional square footage. So other than, the only other thing I would say is if we're talking about the proposed landscape back on Masaryk Avenue, there is that large electrical box there, and certainly it has bollards around it because there's obvious vehicular traffic over there. If we could somehow maybe accentuate the area less with some landscaping, just so they're not these big, huge yellow bollards out towards the street. But really, other than that, I guess the one question I did have, though, is the current loading zone is fenced, so that fence goes away. There's going to be no fencing anymore across the frontage because the only purpose of that fence was to create the courtyard, presumably.
That's correct.
Okay. No, that's basically it. Like I said, it's pretty straightforward. It's just one of the most straightforward we've gotten, I think.
Okay, thanks, John. Shannon Hovan?
Yeah, just really quickly, on the site plan, I just want to confirm / clarify that the utility infrastructure that is shown, the meters, the gas meters, the electrical boxes, all that is existing. Is there any additional or new site infrastructure that is going to be incorporated with the addition?
No, we don't
Okay.
need any additional power.
And any, no HVAC equipment that's going to be visible, nothing on the roof? There is no roof plan. I just want to clarify that there won't be a giant unit sticking out in the middle of a residential neighborhood or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
All that's good. And I know Tom did make a comment about lighting, and I imagine that you'll just carry over the same approach, adding some security lighting to this building.
Correct.
I'm sure you can't add too much lighting, given it is in the middle of a residential neighborhood. You don't want to flood everybody out, but just,
Well, yeah, I mean, the lighting, as far as that parking lot on the right is concerned, will be lower level lighting facing down and away from the residences on the other side of the street.
that would be great. That would be great. Thank you for the samples. Appreciate that. And I think aesthetically, it just seems like we're just sort of pulling the facade towards us, on Benton Street, but I do particularly like that the addition is sort of acting separately from the two buildings that are flanking it. It is a nice little intention.
And it's perfect from his perspective because he's enclosing a box, 3 sides of which already exist. So, I mean, talk about simple construction.
Exactly. Yep, nothing more from me, Jamie, thank you.
Okay, Jamie Millward, Chair. I have nothing really further to add, but I will just say, that landscaping thing is important to us, you can tell. And I would just say, Attorney Knott, you brought up the fact that it's residential right across the street, and I'm looking here at this picture. So, imagine if, you're living there, and what would you like to see across the street if you happen to live next to an industrial building, So I think thickening that up from a landscaping perspective, you can take an opportunity to be kind to your neighbors, and, we strongly encourage that. So other than that, I have no further comment.
Well, if you incorporate those comments into your recommendation, because I know zoning is going to make us do it anyway, but any suggestions you have regarding details of landscaping, we'll abide by. I mean, we don't have any problems with it. I didn't want to show it at this stage of the game because I didn't know what the desire of the various commissions would be regarding that. So we're going to do whatever everybody wants us to do.
Appreciate that. One more thing, Shannon, go ahead.
I was just going to echo Jamie's comment. And your family's company's been in the town for a couple generations now, so you're respected and people know you and you're part of the community. So anything you can add to just sort of show, hey, we appreciate being here. We appreciate the neighborhood. We want to make it better. I think that would go a long way too. So appreciate
62 years, almost as long as mine has been here. Of course, I look a lot older than he does.
Okay, so is there any other comments? Without comments, Tom, have you taken some notes on a list there?
Typical list.
All right. I would like to make a favorable recommendation for 300 and 335 Benton Street and 261 Masaryk Avenue with the following notes. The dumpster enclosure should be split-face block to match proposed material with operable doors that are not chain link, located at the back edge of the 16 spaces parking lot on Masaryk Avenue. The electrical box should have more plant screening as practical. Landscaping and trees should be enhanced along Masaryk Avenue to screen the building from the residential area. Lighting shall be necessary for security and not spill over to neighboring properties. Signage should be attractive if added in the future, and mechanical units should be screened from view.
I'll second those recommendations to ZBA.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Attorney Knott, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Good
much.
luck with, good luck with your project.
Cheers. See you later.
Okay, next on the agenda, members' comments, and,
You can take it.
no,
with
you
you.
can take it. Okay, so next on the agenda, as I said, members' comments. So I do have a couple things that I would like to bring to everyone's attention while we're together. And that's, number one, is it came to my attention from Susmitha that, if you recall, the application by Starbucks down at 1220 Linden Avenue, they revised their site plan. If you recall, that was the one with the small, patio out in front, and they actually changed it around, moved the building forward, and eliminated the patio. Now, Susmitha brought that to me, just to say how we'd like to handle it. I guess legally, we don't have necessarily a right to force them to come back, but so kind of zoning, I think, Ann Smith was asking for how would we like to have any input on this. And so I went back through our conditions, and I just kind of reiterated the fact that, that we thought the patio was a real benefit and that our recommendations still held. And if we felt strongly about it, that, from a placemaking standpoint, that was, I'm not sure why they did. They did relook at the dumpster.
I can tell you
Okay,
why
go ahead.
The utilities were forcing them to move that because they were in their zone. I think it was something to do with the utility infrastructure. Probably, I don't know many details about it, but I was told that there's a utility company that was asking them to stay out of their zone.
Okay, so we may, look,
That makes sense.
Yeah, and chances are that proposal may go through, like how it has been revised, but Jay and I talked about it, and I did mention that you felt very strongly about the placemaking aspect because, it is the entrance to the town from 95 on that side of the town. And that, your recommendations still hold good. So now it's up to zoning to, figure out a way to recommend to them.
From a practicality standpoint, you don't want to kill a project because there wasn't a place. At least my opinion would be you don't want to kill it because of placemaking. You know what I mean? If we found everything to be architecturally sound, other features a lot, but that's just my.
Yeah, here's where you never know, in my opinion, in doing things like this, is that if it is in fact, an ultimatum, and that there's no negotiation on that, then of course, they have a right to develop their property, and I certainly wouldn't. But, you wonder I wonder how hard they tried. I'll assume maybe that they tried hard, and this is the best they could do. And I think all we can do, and at this reporting, is reiterate that our recommendations still hold, and that got put forth in a letter that we sent to the zoning commission, right?
And to be very honest, the applicant did approach me directly and said, look, we're changing this. Is it okay? Do you want us to come back before ARB again? So they made a good faith effort to reach out, and, even though they didn't have to do that because they're only allowed one review by ARB, they don't have to come back a second time, but they're willing to come back and take input. But I wanted to run it by you first before I asked them to formally come back again, because I didn't see a value of, for them to reappear again.
Right. So,
Is it possible that they can't do the patio there? Can they compromise with us and, make another gesture or something else on the property?
I'm not sure that boat has sailed, but
I recall the lot was terrible. Yeah, big,
It's
very
tight.
small. And they were really hemmed in with, even their circulation pattern for a drive-through was difficult.
I think it'll still be a good project.
In Hanson
Well, I know Harold Watson, Chairman of Zoning Commission, really respects this board and your value, and I'm sure, I have 100% faith that he would make them, you know, abide by the recommendations in a manner that is consistent with, you know, what the site demands, but also, you know, keeping in mind that you want.
Formally do that, correct?
No, you can't, because our town statute is written in such a way that they're only warranted one review, and your advice is recommendation only. So after that, when it goes to zoning, based on the circumstances, zoning can decide whether to accept all recommendations or
Oh,
not.
I get that.
Mhm.
So I mean, how do we,
Are there updated drawings?
Well, I just shared with Jamie
Yeah.
whatever was
well, we
updated,
can't
and
look at it in
Site plan.
official capacity, is what I'm hearing Smita say.
That's-
Can we look at it
It's
without,
just-
So,
just review it as a board and then like update our recommendation if necessary?
I don't
Do they
think
have to
so.
be here?
I mean, you know,
I'm just spitballing.
I
no, we can't, that's why I'm saying,
Yeah.
how do we protect ourselves in the future? Do we?
that's why I ran it by.
Thinking out loud, do we put something in overall? But then how many times do you cover yourself? You know what I mean? Do you put
Yeah.
something in overall that, in the event something can't be done, we wanna see, like Tom points out, other place-making areas as a alternate, but I mean, then you could be
Yeah, you'd
altering
be-
the whole, right, well, if you can't put a cornice here, we wanna see it over here, or if you can't make this facade look like this, make how many different ways can we,
Yeah, I think,
it gets out of.
right, I think it would be difficult to try and word something like that on, you know, a general statement in every, that, right, that would cover everything.
Take it by case since the applicant came to you directly?
Yeah,
Can
that's.
you go to him directly?
No, I mean, as much as we want to make it more a public process, not a private discussion. But I did reach out to Jamie, who also shared with Steve. They both are chair and vice chair, and at some point, you know, you need to make a decision who's representing the board, the chairman, of course, and he determined in his good faith knowledge and experience and effort that this does not warranty a reappearance. And they are not required to reappear too, and somebody can sue the town if we just keep asking
Yeah.
developers to come back and because it's a matter of time and expense for them.
Yeah, look, to be honest, you know, Steve and I, we can't talk about this as a group outside, but Steve and I, you know, one-on-one, if you recall, so Steve and I went back and forth on this, and look, and, you know, we didn't view it as so much as that it would become a negotiation, like, oh, if you can't do this, we want that. You know, we decided that, you know, what we would put forth is just reiterate. Well, it kind of implies if you can't have the placemaking where they showed it, we'd like to see it somewhere else. Essentially, that's, you know, in not so many words, that's what the intent was, rather than have these guys come back to show up.
I was thinking about it today, I was at some meeting, working on like, you don't wanna be so obstructionist that it's not promoting, because like we said, the rest of that project was, we were all pretty pleased with it, you know what I mean, so I don't
Yeah.
wanna let something like that take.
So, look, and it's not like this has happened, you know, 10 times. You know, this is, to my knowledge, the first time something like this has happened. And so we just have to be, we'll have to be mindful, and things, you know, we all know how things go in the design and construction world. Things change, and we are first on the agenda of all the agencies that they need to be in front of. So to think that something won't change somewhat from point A to, point Z, so, but listen,
They have to go before zoning. I know there was a zoning commission meeting earlier this week, but I haven't, received an email that said which ones are approved yet. And we've all been in meetings in and out, so I haven't had a chance to talk.
Part of this whole process is also our relationship with planning and zoning, so if we can't come back and speak for ourselves again, we would hope that they would,
Yeah,
be respecting our recommendations,
yeah,
kind of reiterate that and carry it over.
I mean, is it time because we've existed for long enough now? And we really didn't have, we knew what our charge was in the beginning, but we didn't know our approach, I guess you'd say. Would it be beneficial to have a meeting with the other commission? Is that allowable, Susmita? We can't?
Well,
Just so if we outline, to Shannon's point, placemaking is important to us. So if something like mixed on a plan, it's like, ooh, okay, this is, the 5 pillars of Stratford's Architecture Review Board, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, they do have the, right, I mean, and I was sick last time, but once a year, they do have the chairs of the commissions together for a little outing, and they had it at the Stratford room, at the old, various little places.
So,
And what's that? Of course they're beverages. And so at that time, you make a brief little presentation of what we're doing, but I'm not, but in the same end, I'm not sure that we got to the level of we value placemaking, you know what I mean? It was much more of a general statement about introducing ourselves, and I do feel generally supported. I know we don't have veto power here, but I feel based upon what Smith has told me and, when I run at other members, that we're generally supported fairly well. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
By zoning?
I just want to add that even in the current update to the POCD, the current POCD also refers to placemaking as an important component of, the town plan and vision. And even more so, we are expanding on that and including more details on placemaking opportunities and importance of having placemaking. So when zoning refers to a recommendation, they understand that placemaking is not just architecture review board's priority, but it's the community vision. Overwhelmingly, the town residents have expressed that they want Stratford to look visually attractive, and when we write our staff reports, we emphasize that. And as far as I know, zoning is fully behind this. All the decisions that they have approved lately, unless there is a real solid reason, technical reason for not being able to implement a recommendation, they have fully taken everything that ARB has recommended and advised. And now Dan, when in his permitting, Dan is our CEO, when he's doing the permitting, he reaches out to me with a recommendation letter and confirms and clarifies if he has more questions. And the applicants understand that they would rather just get this out of their way than become a hindrance, because they would delay their own process before zoning. So they are on top of things. They're coming back and asking if they're making any changes. So everybody understands that even though this body is advisory only, that it has some meaningful input and value for the town. So
And just
nobody denies it.
yeah, and just to give you an example how at least in this case, it's an effective procedure, is that Dan Brennan, who Smith is referring to, is a zoning enforcement officer. He's reviewing permits. He just came to Smith with an application that he was unclear as to whether or not the changes that had been made had been reflected what we had wanted, because it was a condition of approval. Now, it happened, so Smith reached out to me. It happened to be, if you remember, I had kidney stones, and I missed that meeting. Steve was there, so I forwarded to him, and he stepped in. This just happened, so I'm not even sure how so Steve reviewed. So at very least, Dan Brennan is taking a look at the drawings and saying, oh, wait a minute, here's my list of conditions. It's not clear to me that they have met those. Susmitha, he got hold of Susmitha, she reached out to me. I let Steve handle it because I was not as familiar with the project. I wasn't at that meeting. And so that felt good to me, that there was a system in place by which we can attempt to have our recommendations, not just heard, but maybe implemented. So that's a good thing. But listen, so my second point, I'm going to jump to my second point, because actually this is, in my opinion, more important and may bring about a little more discussion than my first point. And that's that if you haven't noticed, there are presently renovating the old stone gas station on the south end of the green. And I drove by there and I'm thinking what's going on? How can this be happening? And, I reached out to Susmitha and I asked her that. I said, how can this happen? And the regulations, how the town regulations are now written. So several years ago, Donut Crazy was the original applicant there, not in front of us, and they got approved to do a certain use, I don't even, it's Donut Crazy, and they had an outside patio, parking, blah, blah, blah. but they've walked away from the project. So now, the owner, I think this is open and is freedom of information kind of stuff, the owner of Cebus is purchasing that property, or leasing the property, I'm not sure which, but I assume purchasing the property, and is going to make it like a little, if you're familiar with Terrain in Westport, you would know Terrain in Westport. So it's obviously a much smaller scale, a little garden shop, cafe, outdoor patio, but it was this considered at the town level in zoning, it was considered to be, because it's the same use, they were not required to go back and get any further zoning approval. And since there was no zoning approval required, there is no requirement for our board to have any say in this. Now, the crappy-looking vinyl windows that I see going in there gives me pause. You should take a close look. It's your neighborhood. So, yeah. So I talked at length then to Jay about this whole process. And, and he said, well, why don't you make, you can change your own bylaws. Now, I had sent to him that I dug up the bylaws, and it does say that we are to make recommendations to any land use boards and town agencies. And I am splitting hairs, and he wouldn't really work it this way, but it doesn't say that just because they don't have to go to some other boards, that they don't still have to come to us. That's not what it says. It just says that, but Jay's like, look, I'm not gonna be able, I'm not gonna interpret it that way. And I get it. He's not gonna interpret it that way. So he said, do you want to change your own regulations? But the problem is, and what I explained to him is that because we're an advisory board, if we change our regulations and say that group had to come to us, but there was no other board they had to go to,
So they have no other need currently, so they.
right, so hang on, so.
That's not fair.
What, well, wait, what we then talked about, and this would be he's recommending that if we want to pursue this, he says there are certainly what he refers to as high leverage areas in town, those that have to be identified. And what I said, it's not about just getting in front of this board, it should be in front of the zoning commission. In a property like that, which is kind of, you could say the little gateway, they already have approval, although it's a different project. It's a different owner, it's considered in zoning lingo the same use, but it's so I'm not sure how to word this. No, we did not.
So this was done before you guys
We
were
existed.
established in 2018?
Think about it, zoning doesn't require an updated permit if you're not changing the footprint, if you're not altering anything that would force them to review it from a zoning regulation standpoint.
So here's the,
We need to address this though, because that means that like any facade in
That's-
Paradise Green could be changed
That's correct.
at any time,
It's
and
like
none of
that
us would know
building
about it.
across from Bank of America.
so
Klaus Art
if I
Gallery.
may interrupt a little bit.
Yep.
Because I know I have to run
Okay,
pretty quickly.
please.
But
Yep.
I will just give you my 2 cents on that. So imagine you were a commercial property owner and you were to, you're looking to relocate into a space that's not commercial use, vacant space. And now you're being faced with additional burden of having to go before the zoning commission, ARB, and other town agencies just because you feel like it has to look a certain way. I think it can be litigated in courts unless you adopt it as in your POCD, as this is the continuation, it has its territory areas and these are the territory areas.
It already is in our POCD, it's in the old POCD.
But it was never adopted as a statute in a statutory language. So we cannot now ask the property owner and say, hey, just because you're located in Paradise Green, even though it's a commercial use and you're just going inside and doing some changing of windows and rehabbing, we still want you to go before ARB. We cannot mandate that because the law doesn't say that. The statutes don't spell out.
Structural changes to the building.
Well, that
nothing
were-
gets
I don't think
added.
he's doing any major structural changes to the building.
And
The back is not ARB's purview anyway. It's the exterior from the street, right?
It doesn't say that. You can see it. It doesn't say that.
I thought you never, when your recommendations you were giving, you said, oh, it's not visible from the street, so it's fine.
Well, that doesn't mean we couldn't have, we're maybe less concerned with it.
It's on a corner, you can see all four
Yeah.
sides.
That I agree, but even then, like, there is government bureaucracy overburdening legislation versus, balancing the aesthetics here.
Yeah.
How much do you want to
Look.
control everything?
Yeah, look, I get that, and I'm in the development world, and I don't want to be an obstructionist, but I will say that there are certain high leverage areas in town, and our mission, and I go through this all the time at the state level with the state historic preservation, right? You can say, oh my God, we can't do this, it's going to cost $1 million, and their answer is, we don't care. Our mission is historic preservation. All right. So if I want to say it that way,
You should also look at the market. What's the demand there? I mean, you don't want to be anti-development. You don't want to come to a point where-
but Susmitha, if
But if there's no gateway for us to make change in these areas, and people could just willy-nilly do whatever they want. What is the point?
if that building becomes a terribly ugly-looking building,
The ARB was certainly not intended to work only south of Main Street, and that's why we're already been.
So
Never.
you should go and fix the statute. And what I'm trying to say is go to the ARB ordinance and suggest a change to the charter that speaks to the fact that you have areas like Paradise Green and the town
Yes.
center where you want ARB oversight on development permits
but
as well as land use applications.
here's the question though, is it enough to say just ARB? Because if it's just ARB and they don't have anybody else to go to, yes, they're gonna sit in front of us, but there is no, there's no hammer there because zoning doesn't come after us and make our conditions of approval part of the approval to do the project.
It went through zoning as a holistic project. If you, in 2018.
This is a special condition, but it is sort of highlighting, wow, there are other things.
But
It went before zoning because of its size, and it was part of a special case review, but you were not established then.
Right.
You were late in the game, but then now they have a use that's permitted as of right, and the commercial property owner is just trying to relocate into this.
A very friendly letter to them and
I don't think so.
we would, not unless you feel talented.
yeah, that's the problem. I mean, I think some more thought has to be put into Jay's, after speaking about it with Jay, he recognized that perhaps just having us review projects may not get us anywhere, but that we could, and really he said we'd have to approach the mayor. And the mayor is certainly, pro-development. And while she is responsible for forming this group, maybe this is where Susmitha is kind of getting her language from because, Mayor Hordick's the boss.
Actually, honestly, Jamie, I don't talk to Mayor and Jay
Okay.
about this.
Okay.
But I know with experience working in other communities like New Haven, and I know that when a commercial property owner comes here before you, they're under a timeline. They have a developer, they have financing, they are under the gun. And you have to balance commercial aesthetics with the real estate demand and developer friendliness.
But
We've done a great job at that. What I'm saying to Tom though is every time it's only major changes. Like this was even so borderline. Like this is something I'm like, I knew it was gonna be 5 minutes tonight. There was
Yeah.
there's nothing to opine on, whereas you have a foundational area.
Look,
that's
Tom's been
valid.
trying to say something here. Go ahead. No, it's all right, but I'm going to jump in, but you go first.
I want to fix this, what are we calling it, donut crazy building. Can we send them that packet?
You can't, Tom. No, you can't. You can't do. Legally, you can't do it. Listen, that
I don't think
Yeah,
it's unique
here-
though. It's not unique at all, because there's so many times, how many properties are on the rolls, that have already gone.
not if it's same use.
Here's my point, how many of these projects are shelved that have these approvals already, that we won't even be able to touch with 10
But here's the other thing I wondered.
It's also like, it's unfair to somebody, just because they're trying to locate in a Paradise Green area and not on lordship, you're asking them to go before zoning, and you're asking them to go before ARB,
Yes.
you're asking them
If
to
it's the-
spend more resources on it, but it isn't as of right use. If they were to go on Barnum, they would just, and
Then
that
why,
will kind
but
of kick away
Susmitha,
people from
Susmitha,
investing.
then why do we even exist then? Because all we have done is reviewed industrial
Jamie,
buildings.
you're-
We are not, you can't convince me for a second that we shouldn't be reviewing changes to the front of the buildings in the green. And I forgot to mention it after the fact, I didn't mention it, Jay, is how long do these approvals hold for? Like this was, Donna Creasy got approved in, 18? Usually there's time
There were
limits
a
on
couple
this.
of extensions that they were granted. But what I'm
You know-
trying to
So
say is,
there you go, right off the bat. If they have to come in for an extension, that's an easy one, Jamie. Now we do exist. This stuff that's been on the shelves for 4 or 5 years because of multitudes of extensions. You come in and
Look,
another extension, ARB now exists, we're
well,
coming.
I'm
We're
not,
coming to the table.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying that it's not it's a bad idea, but all I'm saying is fix the charter if you want people to keep coming before you. But make sure you understand that there will be significant community and developer resistance, not just at the meetings, but also people intentionally now not wanting to go to Paradise Green because they know it's much cheaper for me if
Look,
I went to Barnum Ave,
Hey.
and I don't have to go through this process. And now you're inviting a certain pool of people only,
Well,
your
we're gonna
niche market.
Guess what, Susmitha? We're gonna include Barnum Avenue on this list too, because there are certain arteries in town, when Sickless goes and he's gonna renovate the old clouds and stuff and change the windows and everything like that, we should get to look at that.
I talked to the mayor and. Yes.
That's what I would like to do.
Isn't there is there any funding mechanisms for this type of, no, I'm saying for this type of rehabilitative work?
CDBG, commercial facade grants used to
That's what I'm
exist,
saying,
but
like,
they don't
if
exist
they're
anymore.
going for that money, how is there?
Oh, but they're not though. Jimmy Sickless is not,
No, I know.
you know,
I'm not, I'm just saying in general, I mean. You have to drag him in here anyway. So.
yeah.
Unless someone forces him to come. And no one would, honestly, unless they had to.
There's so many,
That's what we're trying to figure out.
And-
How can we?
and I would say the town center and the green, would we say those are the two most important arteries? The center of town and the green, but I would throw, but, all right, and so what else would we consider? I mean, I would think Route 1, absolutely, not as much, I don't think.
No, lordship, look at the old POCD. There was a whole plan. It's totally been wiped off the.
No, I was talking about that a little bit. Yes.
But how about, I've been looking at that, I don't know how the blight works in this town. I'm looking at that little strip mall across the street from where old Keating Ford used to be at Hart's Corner. You know which building I
That
mean?
one
With-
mandates
That's been
a lot of,
missing the.
Yeah, missing the whole facade of the building, and I think, why can't somebody, is there a blight, is there a fine that you pay? I assume there probably some mechanism in town, but then even what they're gonna do with that,
I was suggesting that the town should restart the commercial facade grant program, invite property owners of commercial properties like this and say, hey, we also have an architectural review board that can
That's where I was
volunteer
going
its
with
service
Yeah.
if you
Where's the
need
hook? Oh,
assistance.
here's a hook, okay.
well, make it a prerequisite. If you want the
But
grant,
that
you have to
doesn't-
come.
That wouldn't invite everyone. Commercial facade grant is only for low and very low income, property owners. So it will not automatically require
But can it
everyone to
be-
go through that process.
It can't be open to the facades of the green. It only qualifies for
You
low.
can have an overlay architectural district through zoning. I mean, in your
Yeah.
POCD, if you can say, we would have this architectural overlay district for Paradise Green
That's not
and Barnum Ave, and say, from this area to this area, all properties in here should go through,
But,
you know,
I guess the
special
way I'm
permitting
looking at it
process or
is
something.
Unless you're a brand new developed area in town, there's absolutely, everything is already as of right use. That's the whole point of zoning, is that there is a use in that area. So a property changing hands, we will never
Well, and we don't care, but unless they're making unless they're making aesthetic
Susmita,
changes.
tell me I'm wrong. I'm not wrong.
But Susmita,
Look, I mean, I'm torn here. I want communities to look a certain way, but I also understand there's a fine line between how we drive the market. I mean, Stratford's thriving business-wise. You don't find a single empty spot because you're so business-friendly. You come in, you get in there, you fix the property, you operate a business.
But there's a town
But
right
if you
north of
add
us that
more and
does it
more,
too, and they're-
Yeah.
no, but if you add more
And
and
then-
more layers, but if Westport is doing that, Westport has a different target income in the population.
Agreed, but I,
Like Stratford's population, their demographic, their income base is different.
absolutely.
And requiring every property owner who has barely money to
But
fix
if-
the property to come,
but
on
if-
Barnum Avenue, to come before zoning and ARB and run
But
through
if
several
we
layers
can't-
of bureaucracy is not something I would be,
part of
you know,
our
fond of.
checklist is the narrative. I think that's a good spot for, these property owners to say, hey, I don't have a lot of money. This is a small project. It sets the tone for, what.
That's discriminatory. That could be upheld in courts.
Yeah. Look, I don't know how to handle this. All I know is that if we can at least try to figure out a way for the couple of the main arteries to, attempt to have some say here. I'm not saying
I strongly
every,
support Paradise Green in town center, but
Okay.
not Barnum.
You're the voice
I know, well, I
Because
wanted to
the
talk to you guys
property owners
first.
don't have the money.
You're the
You know,
voice of
I don't wanna overburden them.
No, Susmita, that's one of my reasons I wholeheartedly agreed to join this, is I don't want to be obstructionist, but at the same time,
I think you're already making a difference in the bigger developments, like, who would look at one small store? You're impacting
but we've
TODs,
spent
you're
so much
impacting
time
large
south of
commercial
Barnum
scale.
Avenue.
Yeah,
I feel like we've spent our whole careers on this board, south of Barnum Avenue.
That's right.
Barnum Avenue, excuse me, with the exception of the development that'll be happening up near Sikorsky. That was the only other substantive
yeah,
Well, at some point,
project.
the Writer's Landing thing, yeah.
That's it.
well, I
So
You
we
have
can
to
go on and on all night, Jimmy. I think you bring it to the mayor, you've talked to Jay,
Yeah.
you've talked to Susmita.
Look,
It sounds
and
like the
it's gonna
town
be a
is-
general conversation or email first, and I am personally think it should apply, because as you drive down Route 1, Route 1 in most other towns, as you drive up out of New York, it's nice.
Can I
And
suggest
when you go
something?
through Bridgeport and Stratford, not so nice. And you get to Milford, nice. So why is our stretch? So we're just gonna let anybody do whatever they want, and it's gonna be crappy, and that's what we're gonna be stuck with, because we don't wanna stick our nose, and we don't wanna be anti-development.
No. You can do one alternate thing. And I've always advised that, when I first started my term here, I advised to the staff that we should have a village district overlay or something that has design guidelines with standards embedded into the regulations. So now you don't have to go and ask every property owner to come here, but the, regulations automatically advise them, you have to put, incorporate certain design guidelines, just like the TODs. They have design guidelines in them already. But the challenge here is, how much can we allow parking to the rear and not to the front? Is there room for access? Is there room for fire trucks? These have to be thought out. We are going to roll out a zoning regulations update next year after the POCD is done. Jay's working on an RFP. That's where I think ARB has a major role in looking at the design standards and offering insight on what kind of elements, what kind of
Are you saying-
distances.
You're talking about substantive property changes. I think
I'm
what
talking
Jamie
about
is-
design overlay.
It's not, I know, but we're talking about these non-significant property changes, but aesthetic changes to the building.
To the building.
We've always kind of been a la the Paradise Green gas station.
Okay.
But certainly the as of right thing, that you're always gonna run into that. My concern is, like you said, and like Jimmy brought up, how many years you can go on, and we do exist now.
Yeah.
So the next time you come for, but I don't think that would play either.
Well, no, but I actually had thought that was, kind of valid. How long do they get to keep saying, oh, we don't have to go back, because it's, you know, I mean, how long does that approval stand for? I don't even know what they, did they need a what, when
They had to
Donut
go through a
Crazy?
special case review before the zoning commission because, you know, of what they were doing. But the special cases, I think, they can be renewed for a period of 18 months or if they don't go right away, and they have up to 2 extensions. So they utilize those extensions, and now they're on the ground. They built-
Extensions that are automatically granted?
Well, administratively granted. PNC staff grant them because sometimes they don't have their financing in place, and they will
But
need more time.
I'm not saying you would do this, but you know, you could have taken, Jay or whoever made the decision, could have taken the tack, oh yeah, you do have approval, but since that time, the ARB has now come, and, you know, we're feeling like as a,
But
you
most
know,
of the
that should be
project is
included.
done.
But, and who are we gonna give our recommendations to?
Well, that's the problem. That's the
That's what I'm
problem.
saying,
Yeah, absolutely. That's why just changing our recommendations, or our ordinance to make them come to us isn't enough, because we don't have any true bite. It's gotta be, so, you know, it's gonna, it's the mayor.
You won't be able to get any bite, that's for sure.
It's gonna be, Jay said, I gotta draft something and send her an email. You know, I just know how that works, you know, it's a
I
little.
think this is the best ever, I would say. Most other towns I have seen, they don't even have the staff capacity to run these boards or to.
But how does like a Darien
I think,
do it?
I don't know about Darien. Darien is a whole different game. I won't compare with Darien, first of all. I look at communities like Bridgeport, New Haven, similar income demographic, and I think by far ARB is doing a very successful job here compared to those communities.
That could be. I mean, you know, like John said, though.
People get paid $150 in Darien.
I understand,
150K.
but what, the only
We
thing,
don't get paid that much, but we're still doing the job right.
yeah, I get it, but like John said, you know,
I
we
hope
have
I'm not on the record.
spent our life reviewing,
Are we recording?
No, I think that they record automatically there, but my voice won't be here because I'm not on the mic.
oh, my mic's on, but. I will pursue, you know, don't hold your breath.
I was gonna ask this week for an update on the POCD, but there's not enough time for that, so No, that's fine, that's fine.
I can call you and let you know. I mean, what we're doing is, we finished all the meetings and, some of us are right now working on the draft.
All right, so, where's my agenda? Is there a motion on the floor?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Tom Sarkis, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?